We're going to just continue today. I'm going to review the Ten Commandments because it's a good place to start in a course on moral theology, because the commandments are the most basic guide we have. And you take out those sheets that I passed out. This is morals and what we are obliged to do, the Ten Commandments, God's law. But to start today's lecture, I'm going to ask a question. I was listening on my way here, my 4-minute drive at the time from my rectory to here. You know where I live? Anyone know where I live? Where do I live?
You live by St. Teresa?
Nope.
Or is it the other one? Mount Carmel?
I live by Mount Carmel. St. Teresa's father would take me along with the train. You know who lives at St. Teresa? Father Todd and Father Bob Wayner. I and Father Reese live at Mount Carmel Church. And is it that way or is it this way? Which way are we looking here? It's east. Okay, so it's that way. It's north. I live north. On my way here this morning, I listened to a radio station. There's a new radio station. So, did you know that? A Catholic radio station, 88.5 FM. It's I forget the name of the station, but it's relevant radio. Is what they call it. And they have programs, religious programs. Different people are guests that talk. And I don't know who the fellow was talking this morning, but he was talking about the Ten Commandments in a few minutes I caught. He put out a question to the listeners, which I'm going to put out to you. Do you obey the Ten Commandments because you see them as liberating, as freeing us? Truth will make you free. Or do you obey the Ten Commandments because you regard them as a restriction on your freedom? It's a good thing to think about, because we shouldn't regard the commandments as something that restricts our freedom. Oh, God won't allow me to steal or lie or do all these bad things. The commandments are there to help us to lead a good life, and they help us to be truly free. That's why God gave them to us. And I used this analogy before, I'll just use it again. You buy a car, you get an owner's manual. And the owner's manual tells you how to care for the car, how to take care of the car. You can take the car home and do whatever you want to the car. Instead of putting oil in the crankcase, you can put honey. It looks kind of the same. It's going down. If you were pouring honey in the crankcase and pouring oil and you were far away, you couldn't tell the difference. You'd say, I like honey better, it smells good, it tastes good. Oil doesn't taste good. But if you put oil down the crankcase, that car is going to burn up. The engine's going to burn up. It's not going to run because it requires oil. The pistons may go up and down for a few minutes, and then things are going to burn up in the engine because honey just doesn't do it. And by analogy, God gives us the commandments because He made us and He knows what's good for us. He knows what would make us happy, and happiness equals holiness, put it simply. The real happy people in the world are the people that are holy, that are following God's will. The miserable people are the ones who are chained to different sins and are enslaved, because God wants to free us. Sin enslaves us. That's the bottom line. If we have things we're enslaved to, it could be alcohol, drugs, pornography, whatever it may be. We're slaves. We're not free. I know people that are have been addicted to drugs, are alcoholics, and they're not happy. It's just they're enslaved. They're chained to their addictions. And I had a cousin who was a successful dentist who things happened in his life, a divorce, and his life went on a downward spiral, and he got on drugs, and he's no longer in the world because of the abuse he gave his body. And it's sad. We see people doing things that harm themselves and get addicted to things. Well, the commandments are meant to free us. They're meant to make us happy. All of the teachings of Christ are there to make us happy. And if we're truly free, we'll be happy. And Jesus says the truth will make you free. The commandments are there to help free us, to liberate us from things that could enslave us, sins. And but here's another important thing about the commandments. The Ten Commandments are knowable by the use of our reason. People can figure out what the Ten Commandments are just by using our God-given reason. The commandments are really an expression of the natural law. I think I said this before, but just to reiterate it. Because all cultures, throughout history, they've regarded, stealing and lying and doing these bad things, murder, they regard them as wrong. We have laws in the state that prevent stealing and lying and murder and thievery and all these other things. That's because people have used their reason and figured out that these are not good things to do, so we have laws that prevent them. Did you study when you were, I studied when I was a freshman. I don't know what year you study it now. You ever heard of the law of Hammurabi? You ever studied the law of Hammurabi? That's one of the ancient Egyptian codes of law, one of the oldest. And if you compare the code of Hammurabi, Hammurabi was a pharaoh. The things that were prohibited under the code of Hammurabi, not the law of Hammurabi, the code of Hammurabi. And you put that next to the Ten Commandments, they pretty much line up. It was what a ruler, through his use of reason and probably some wise people that were advising him, okay, set a code for conduct to make good citizens of the state. So the commandments are things that we should be able to know by use of our reason, but God gives them to us in order that we might easily know them, so we don't have to exert a lot of mental effort. Because some people, they may not have the time to sit back and contemplate on what good moral living should be, so God makes it easy. So no one has excuses either. We know what the Ten Commandments are. You can't say, well, I just was ignorant of it. Another thing about the moral law is that we have an obligation to learn it. We can't just profess ignorance and say, oh, I didn't know about it, when we had the opportunity to learn about it. We have an obligation to inform ourselves of what the moral law is, the teachings of Christ. And it doesn't work out in the civil area either. I use an example. I used to prosecute. I used to be a prosecuting attorney. One of the people I used to prosecute, a group, was traffic violations for a while. Okay? And believe me, people get more angry over speeding tickets than they do over murder cases sometimes, because if they think they weren't speeding and a police officer got them on the radar, they start arguing in court. Anyway, imagine if you were traveling down the road and you're on a county highway where you can go 55 miles an hour, and then you're approaching a town. And if you kept going 55 or 60 through the town and didn't slow down, and the police officer pulls you over, and you pleaded ignorance. You said, well, I didn't know that there was a speed sign that lowered the speed in the town. Would the police officer say, oh, well, that's okay, you can go, if you refuse to look at the speed sign? If you just ignored it and, plowing through the town, going 55 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, the officer's not going to say, oh, well, gee, you didn't know that that you were supposed to slow down because you refused to look at the speed sign, so I'll let you go. No, you're going to get a ticket because you had an obligation to look at the speed signs as you're going through towns. Reason tells you this, that you should. So pleading ignorance of the law is no excuse, and God expects us to know the law. So that's why we study the moral law. That's why you have a class like this, because there are additional things that we should know added to the Ten Commandments. But we started the Ten Commandments, and we went over the first commandment on Friday. What the first commandment obliges us to do, to worship God, and then what it prohibits us from doing. Being unfaithful, infidelity, apostasy is joining, if you said, oh, I'm no longer a Catholic, I'm a Protestant, or Muslim. Heresy, which is a direct refutation of some doctrine of the church. Indifferentism. That's a real problem today, because many people say, it doesn't matter what faith you believe, as long as you believe in something. Well, that's a relativistic view of looking at faith. It does matter. Why does it matter what we believe in regard to our faith and religion? I'll give you a hint. We professed it in the opening prayer today. Who changed everything when he came? Amy? Jesus. Okay? The Son of God became man and showed us the way. So, Jesus wouldn't agree that, well, you can believe anything as long as you believe in something, and that's okay because everyone will go to heaven. No. Jesus gave his great commission: go out and preach to the nations and teach them everything I've taught you and baptize them. Bring them into the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church that I founded. So, indifferentism is it's an effective moral relativism. It's relativism of the faith, basically. You're indifferent. It doesn't matter how you worship or what you worship. One God, many gods. Who cares as long as you believe in something? Well, that really doesn't resonate well with our intellect if we know that there's a truth. So we can't presume of God's mercy or despair of it. That's against hope. We have to hope in God. I mentioned the Old Testament and the New Testament as well. Belief in charms, spells, interpretation of dreams, guiding your life by dreams or by the stars, fortune telling. All these things are prohibited. They're regarded as serious sins, mortal sins, if you're delving into these things. We don't do that. When you're delving into spiritism, calling upon spirits or calling upon another power like a Ouija board, you're calling upon a power other than God. And there are powers out there other than God. And, for example, the devil is a power other than God. And you're delving into something that God prohibits. These are all under the banner of superstition. But oftentimes people want to know the future. Well, we don't have the right to know the future. God knows the future. God wants us to be concerned with today, not to know what will happen tomorrow or next week or a year from now. To somehow read the future and get a special knowledge that no one else has. No, we can't do that. So, anyway, we'll move on to the second commandment, which is, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. What it obliges us to do is to have reverent speech regarding God, the saints, and holy things. God's name is holy. So, why do people, when they get angry, use God's name? I think it can be a bad habit. I'm guilty of that myself when I was younger. You get angry and you start cursing, using bad language in general, but then using God's name or Jesus Christ's name. And no, his name is holy. God's name is holy, and God doesn't appreciate when we misuse his name. So we want to use his name reverently. And the second commandment obliges in taking oaths as well. Now, when do you take an oath? Alicia, when do you take an oath? When do you think? When would you take an oath? If you were, for example, to take an oath, I swear. Where?
In court.
In court, you would take an oath. Okay. And I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. As a prosecutor, I could say, the criminals and the people that were cooperating with them, they come in and they lie. They just lie, outright lie. And God regards it as a serious offense if you're swearing on God's name that you're telling the truth and you're not. And the state even punishes it. If you lie under oath, that's a felony in almost every state that I know of. If you lie under oath, you say, I swear to tell the truth, and you tell a lie, and you can prove it. Proving it is difficult. But you can be prosecuted for a felony, for perjuring yourself. That's perjury. You have to tell the truth. And fidelity to vows, too. You know, I take a sacred promise when I was a priest that I would be faithful to priesthood. Married couples take a sacred promise that they'll be faithful to each other. And to break that vow or that sacred promise is a serious offense. The second commandment forbids false oaths, perjury, taking God's name in vain. And usually, this isn't a mortal sin, a serious sin. If someone just in anger says and uses God's name in a bad way, it's regarded as a serious offense against God if you're cursing God out. When you turn toward God, you shake your fist at God. And some people do this when they get angry. They may lose a loved one and get angry at God. That's serious because you can't really curse God out in a bad way. When people are just using God's name in a bad way when they get angry, that's usually not a mortal sin, but it is a sin, and we should avoid it. Cursing, just using bad language, blasphemy, profanity. Okay, we want to use good language as Christians. So the third commandment, remember, keep holy the Lord's Day or the Sabbath. This used to be Saturday with the Jews. Now it is Sunday. Why is the Lord's Day Sunday? Anna, do you know why it is? There's a reason why the Lord's Day was changed. The Sabbath was changed from Saturday, the Jews, that was their Sabbath day, to Sunday. It has to do with something Jesus did 3 days after he died on the cross. The resurrection. He rose on Sunday. Every Sunday is the day of the Lord because it's the day of the Lord's resurrection. Every Sunday we're celebrating the resurrection of the Lord. It's just one Sunday of the year we celebrate it liturgically with Easter Sunday. But every Sunday we're celebrating the Lord's resurrection. And it obliges that we pray Mass on Sunday, or the church allows Saturday evening from 4 o'clock on. If we attend Mass Saturday evening, that suffices, or Sunday. We should try to do it on Sunday. That's the Lord's Day. But Saturday is really for those who may not be able to attend on Sunday. That's the original idea of it. And it obliges seriously. We offend God in a serious way. It's a mortal sin if we don't attend Mass on Sunday. We just can't blow off God. And it's really a lack of appreciation of what the Mass is. Because I like to tell people, it's just not, don't think of it as just an obligation. It is a response in love. Jesus died on the cross for us. And we come out of love for Christ, out of thankfulness of what he did for us. Eucharist means thanks. We give thanks to God for what he did for us. So God wants us there to worship as a community, okay? Not just individually. I remember I spoke with a guy, a farmer some years ago, okay, who insisted that he did his own thing. He said, I pray out on my tractor, when I'm plowing my fields on Sundays. And I said, really? He said, Well, yes, that's how I satisfy, that's how I keep the Lord's Day holy. And I say, well, out on your tractor or walking your fields, can you receive, are you present at the Eucharistic sacrifice? And he had to admit no. I said, can you receive Holy Communion? No. Well, we don't have the ability to make up our own rules as to how to worship God. God has told us how to worship. That's what the Mass is. Jesus gave us the instructions. He said to his apostles, do this in remembrance of me. We've been doing it ever since. And in the early church, if someone missed Mass for a couple of times, a couple of weeks, you were regarded as an apostate, meaning people thought, well, that person fell away from the faith. And you would have to, you wouldn't be allowed to receive communion, you would have to undergo instruction again, because, well, you're not getting it what it means to be a faithful Christian, a Catholic Christian. And there's a famous story of the martyrs of Tagaste in northern Africa. This was under one of the persecutions. I think it was the Emperor Decian in about 250. The Catholics in northern Africa, they were told by the emperor, you cannot attend your religious services anymore. You have to be worshiping the pagan gods. And they responded as a whole group before the emperor, we cannot live without the Mass. Because the Mass, we celebrate the Eucharist. The Eucharist is Jesus Christ. And so they had a chance to stop going to Mass and live, or tell the emperor, we're going to continue to go to Mass and then die. And they died. They were martyred. The martyrs of Tagaste. T-A-G-A-S-T-E. Google it, read about it. It's inspiring. And the third commandment also forbids servile work on Sunday. Manual labor, which is unnecessary for God's honor, for our own need, or the neighbor's need. We don't save up all of our work to do on Sunday. It is a day of rest. God wants us to rest on Sunday, to rest from our labors. Don't save up all your homework to do on Sunday. I don't like to give tests on Mondays because then students are doing work on Sundays. It should be a day of rest from your labors. Some of us have to work, like moi. Okay, I have Mass on Sunday, and I have catechesis on Sunday for high school kids. So I have to work on Sundays, but that's part of the vocation that I'm in. But we shouldn't be performing unnecessary work on Sunday. Now, what if someone? I'll give you two examples here. As someone who maybe is the head of a household, the major breadwinner, and you are made to work on Sunday. That's part of your job. You lose your job. You're supporting your family. Well, then get to Mass on Saturday night or early Sunday morning before you go to work. But you have to work. There's nothing you can do. You're in that circumstance. However, if someone is just working to get extra money, we shouldn't be doing that on Sundays. Sunday's a day of rest. I'll give you another example of that, how faithful people observe this. There's a famous priest, his name is Father de Smet, D-E-S-M-E-T. He was a Belgian Jesuit from the order of the Society of Jesus, founded by St. Ignatius. He came to this country. He helped found St. Louis University down in St. Louis. He was known as the great apostle of the West. He traveled all over the western United States. The United States government called upon him to make treaties with the Native Americans, the Indians, because they trusted him. And he taught the people, the natives, catechized them, they became Catholics. And they would not, even if they were hungry and they had no food, they would not hunt on Sundays because that was the Lord's Day. So they would refrain from hunting. This would be work. We're not going to do that. We'll go hungry if we don't have food. That may be stretching it a little bit. I don't know if God would really be displeased with that. But the idea of Sunday being a day of rest from our labors, God knows what's good for us. He knows that to work every day, 7 days a week, is not good psychologically for us. And besides worshiping God, it should be a day of rest where we rest from our labors. We don't save up our work to do on Sundays. If you like to do gardening work and you do that as a kind of a pleasant pastime, you enjoy it as recreation, that's something that's fine. Okay? But you shouldn't be plowing the fields or mowing the lawns and saving up work on Sunday, working a number of hours, because that's manual labor, unnecessary labor. And even I would include schoolwork on that too, even though it's not, quote, manual labor. Yes?
Did that guy who you talked to about mass and stuff, the farmer, did he ever go back to mass?
No, he didn't. His daughter was getting married in church, and I was saying, well, you should be going to mass. And he got all angry at me, saying, he worships God in his own way. And I said, well, you just became your own church and your own interpreter of divine law. I'm sorry, but you try to do what you can. Some people are stubborn, and all I can do is tell people the truth. I can't force them, but neither does God. God doesn't force us. God gives us a free will. He says, these are the commandments. I give you the grace to keep them. We have a free will. We can yea or nay. Okay. Now, the third commandment allows recreation, hobbies, necessary servile labor, like I described. If you have to work, you're the head of a household. But if you're single and you don't have to work, you're a teenager, try not to work on Sundays. It should be a day of rest. And if you're helping someone out, who needs help, Jesus even says, okay, if you find your neighbor's animal stuck in a well or whatever, or in mud, you don't just leave it there because it's the Sabbath. You take the animal out. You have to do what's necessary. So we keep holy the Sabbath. The fourth commandment, next page, okay, honor thy father and mother, obliges us to love and help our parents, okay, respect and obey them, our parents and our country, okay, that's part of the fourth commandment in a broader interpretation, all lawful superiors, all just laws we have to obey. The laws of the state, that's under the fourth commandment. If you looked in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, paying taxes comes under the fourth commandment, because we have an obligation to our country to respect the laws of our country. Even St. Paul says we've got to pay taxes. Now, maybe taxes are way too much, I would agree, but we're obliged as citizens to respect and obey our country. Love of country is a virtue. Patriotism, okay, that's not jingoism or nationalism, like our country is the best and every other country. No, that's a wrong idea. But everyone should have a love of country, and we pay taxes, defend the rights of our country, we vote honestly. I'm originally from Chicago. You know the joke in Chicago, at least back in when I was growing up, under previous mayors. The saying was, you vote early and often in Chicago. And the dead even vote. Voting wasn't all that honest in many places in Chicago. I hope it's better up here. Anyway, so we honor our parents. Now, we have to obey when we're young. And that's difficult to obey parents. If you're under the authority of parents, as one grows older and becomes an adult, you don't have to obey. You're not under the obligation to obey anymore, but you still have to respect parents and care for them in their old age. God wants us to care for our parents. They get old and feeble. Care for our children when we're parents and all in charge, but we help our parents, respect and obey them when we're young, and still respect them when we're older. It forbids disrespect, unkindness, disobedience. Disobedience is really for the children, if you're a minor, to parents and lawful superiors. And you know why you have to obey teachers? You know why? There's a Latin term which is well known, maybe you've heard it, in loco parentis. In loco means place of, parentis means parents. The teachers are in the place of the parents in school. That's why teachers have authority to command students, and students have the obligation to obey, because they're taking the place of the parents in the schools. That's what teachers do. That's the law, actually the civil law. So the fourth commandment forbids neglect of our children or those that we're in charge of. Okay, we can't neglect them. It's kind of a two-way street what the fourth commandment is. As far as parents, they have an obligation to form and educate their children. And so the fifth commandment, thou shalt not murder. You see that? Now usually it says thou shalt not kill. Why do you think it says thou shalt not murder? Any ideas? Why? There's a reason why it was, they put the word like that, whoever made up this little sheet. I didn't do this. Okay? It's because all killing is not necessarily wrong. If you kill someone in self-defense, that's not murder. The fifth commandment does not prohibit killing in self-defense. If someone came in here, started shooting, and someone had to shoot that person in order to prevent them from stop killing innocent people, are they guilty of murder? No. So, thou shalt not murder, that's really what it means. That's the Jewish understanding of thou shalt not kill. Murder is the unjust taking of an innocent human life. That's what murder is. So, the fifth commandment obliges us to care for our spiritual and bodily well-being. So we can't go on a fast, which would mean I'm not going to eat anymore, or starve oneself to death. We can't do that. We have to care for our bodies and of ourselves and our neighbors. The fifth commandment forbids murder. That's the unjust taking of, that's innocent human life. That's the key, innocent human life. We can't do that. Suicide, we can't kill ourselves or assist others in committing suicide. We can't do that. Have you heard of Dr. Kevorkian? Ever heard of him? He was the death doctor, death with dignity. People are suffering from illness, so just give them a shot, put them to death. Can't do that. It forbids fighting. The fifth commandment, because fighting is killing someone with our hearts, wanting to inflict injury on people. Okay? When little kids confess that they're fighting with their brothers and sisters, they go to confession. I hit my brother or sister. Well, that comes under the fifth commandment. I tell the kids, well, it's only a venial sin, not a serious sin if you're just, a little fight. But if you picked up a baseball bat and smacked someone over the head and split their skull open, that would be a mortal sin because you're injuring them. Or if you struck someone and knocked them senseless in a fight, inflicting bodily harm on someone, then it would be a serious offense, that fighting. It forbids anger, holding a deep-seated anger towards someone. If someone harms us and we want revenge, you have this deep-seated anger, and that could rise to the level of a mortal sin. If someone's wishing evil upon someone, it just is very, very angry. Hatred, hatred is forbidden by the fifth commandment. A revenge, we don't want to plot revenge against someone. God says we have to forgive people. So the fifth commandment prohibits drunkenness. Now, this rises to the level of even a mortal sin. To get drunk is a serious sin. Why would that be, Why would getting drunk be regarded as a serious sin against the fifth commandment, thou shalt not kill? Any ideas why drunkenness would be regarded as a serious offense? Anyone? Well, what does getting drunk do to us? Tristan, what does getting drunk do? What would that do to the person?
It alters your mind.
You're not able to function as a human being, alters your mind, so you're not able to function intellectually and your free will. People do things when they're drunk that they wouldn't ordinarily do. As a prosecutor, I know people get in fights when they're drunk, where they ordinarily wouldn't. And they end up hurting people or killing them because they're drunk or on drugs. Because drugs alter our mental abilities and our physical abilities. That's why drunk driving is a punishable offense, because you're getting in an automobile and you're putting other people, their lives and health at a serious risk by getting in a car and driving drunk. Yeah. I know, I got hit by a drunk driver going the wrong way on I-57 in central Illinois on a Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m. He had a blood alcohol level of like 3 times the legal limit. He was drunk from the night before. He was going about 80 miles an hour the wrong way down an interstate. And I stopped him. Didn't attempt to stop, but I stopped him. He came this close to killing me, but I wasn't injured, thankfully. There was a woman in front of me who saw him coming. Have you ever been on a street where someone's driving the wrong way? It's been happening to me a couple of times on the expressway, where people got on the wrong way on the ramp, and you see them coming and you're thinking, your mind, it takes a while to figure out what's going on, because you think, is this car stopped? Why am I catching up so quickly? And then by the time you realize that the person's on top of you, you realize, oh my gosh, they're coming toward me. And I saw this happen once in Wisconsin. I was driving out up north, and someone was they got on the wrong side of the interstate. It was on a Sunday morning, and no one was on the road. But when I got hit, there were a number of cars on the road. And the woman in front of me, she pulled over at the last minute and didn't leave me any time. And I was maybe, this guy was about 50 yards ahead of me. And just, I think by the grace of God, my guardian angel, I knew this guy was coming at me, just that fast. I knew he was going the wrong way. And I tried to turn my car as fast as I could. And he hit me right where I had a 2-door Cutlass Supreme, where the door shut back here. He hit me right there. Just a split second, 100th of a second sooner, he would have hit me when I was turning, broadside of me. But he hit the back of me, and my car just spun out. It ended up in the ditch, and I was fine. I saved his life because there were a bunch of semis coming up in both lanes. He would have run right into them. He didn't even move, didn't even veer when he was coming at me. He was so drunk. Didn't even budge an inch, left or right. Because there was a car to the right, a car to my left, the woman who was pulling over, and then me. And he just kept going straight. It was rather frightening. I had a little fear of driving behind someone, not seeing ahead of me for a number of months, Just, it was a frightening experience. So we don't want to get drunk or use drugs, okay? Drugs alter our ability to function too. People do things when they're drunk or under drugs. And the sin is not just if you do something bad, it's putting yourself in that condition. We don't want to do that. Everything is good in moderation. Does the Catholic Church prohibit drinking alcohol? No. Jesus changed water into wine at Cana. And it says they drunk freely. It means they were drinking wine freely, okay? They were feeling pretty good, or that's what people do at a wedding. But to get drunk, that's when you commit a serious offense. If we're getting too high, a little too tipsy, that would be, I'd say, a venial sin. But you get drunk, no, that's a mortal sin. Or you're stumbling around, you're not able to function. No, we don't do that. Abortion of the innocent in the womb, that's under the 5th commandment as well. Okay, that's murder. Why is that? Because the child in the womb is an innocent human being. The child in the womb is not a guilty party, is not an aggressor, is not in any sense deserving of death. Now, we're going to cover another topic which I haven't hit on yet. Guess what I haven't hit on under this fifth commandment? We're going to cover it more in depth later on. Anyone guess what it is?
Death penalty.
The death penalty, yes. I'll just say this because you can look it up in the Catechism. There's a misunderstanding about this. Many people think, Catholics think, oh, the church prohibits the death penalty. No, it doesn't. The state has the ability to put someone to death. That's the authority given by God. The state has that ability to do that, but under certain restrictions. We try to find another way to avoid the death penalty, but the state has the authority to do this. The Catechism says it, right? In black and white. You can open it up. You look it up in the Catechism. The state has the authority to administer the death penalty. And because that is not an innocent person. It's a guilty person. So, but we'll get into that a little later. Okay? So, the sixth commandment is thou shalt not commit adultery. Okay? And adultery means what? What is adultery? Anyone? What does adultery mean? What is adultery?
Looking at somebody else or using them and...
Well, properly speaking, what do we define as adultery? What is that? If someone says, I've been in an adulterous relationship, people come and confess this to me. I committed adultery. What does that mean? It means that one of the two persons involved in this act is married to someone else. You are made one flesh with someone else, and now you are having sexual relations with someone not your spouse. If say, use myself, if I'm married and I have relations with another woman, I'm committing adultery. If I'm married and I have relations with another married woman, I'm committing adultery. Double adultery. It increases the penalty of the sin, the weightiness of the sin, because now there are two violations of the bond of marriage that are taking place here, if two people are involved. And if I'm single, I've never been married, but I'm having sexual relations with someone I know who's married, then I'm committing adultery too. So you can commit adultery in different ways. Now, does it matter if someone has a civil divorce and then they go out and have sexual relations with someone? The answer is no. A civil divorce makes no change in the person's marital state. They're married in the eyes of God. What God has joined, no human power can separate. So, I'm a lawyer. I could be a judge. If two people came to me as a judge and said, we want a divorce, and I sign a decree that says, okay, these two people, Joe and Mary, they're no longer in a marriage in the eyes of the state. They're free to get married now in the eyes of the state. In the eyes of God, that does nothing. Because Jesus says what God has joined, no human authority can separate. So the state has no authority to undo what God has done. I mentioned this before, that there's a possibility of an annulment, that there was never a true marriage to begin with. But when we're talking about adultery, sometimes people come to me. I always have to ask the question, as the priest, when they say, I had sex with someone, okay, what is this? What is the sin that's being committed? Is it adultery? If someone says, well, I say to them, well, are you married? No. Were you ever married? And if they say yes, then I say, well, then this is adultery. Because you're still married in the eyes of God. Unless the church has granted you an annulment, which means you were never really married in the eyes of God. So adultery means, properly speaking, you're having sexual relations with someone who's not your spouse outside of marriage. And as it says here, the sixth commandment obliges us to practice purity and modesty in behavior. Chastity, remember chastity? The use of our sexual powers according to God's plan, depending upon one's state of life, Whether you're single, married, or like me, a celibate priest or a religious sister, consecrated virginity. Okay? So it depends, chastity, on your state of life, how you live out chastity. It forbids impure and immodest words, looks, actions. Now, Anthony, you said looking at someone lustfully. Okay, well, Jesus says, if you look at a woman lustfully, you commit adultery in your heart. And so that's another way to violate the sixth commandment. It isn't adultery per se. You're not involved in the action of adultery, but you're committing adultery in the heart. But there's just a nuance here that people have to understand, because people come to me and they confess sometimes, okay, I looked at someone lustfully, or I had an impure thought, or I looked at a picture, if you look at a pornographic picture and you're looking at it to get pleasure out of it, that's a serious sin. Okay? Then you're committing adultery with the heart. Okay? But say if something pops up and you're not expecting it, you look at it, well, then you turn away from it. Or you're watching a movie, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a sex scene in the movie, and here the people are naked. Well, then turn off, bypass it, look away, don't keep looking at it, because if you're looking at it for pleasure that it will give, well, that's where the sin is involved. An impure thought, or if you say you look at someone lustfully, okay, you look at someone and it really becomes a serious sin, a mortal sin, only if you're doing it, you're entertaining the thought or the look. I'll give you an example, an impure thought. An impure thought may come. Thoughts are not necessarily sins. That's what we have to distinguish. Thoughts could be a temptation. An impure thought comes, we have to try to fight against it. Once we realize that we're thinking about something that's impure, we reflect on it. Oh, I'm not thinking about something good now. I'm looking at this person or thinking about this person in an impure way. Well, then we have to try to get rid of that thought. Okay? Put it out of our mind. And you know the easiest way to do that? There's one surefire way to do it. Pray. You can't pray and have an impure thought at the same time. If you start praying right away and keep praying, sometimes the thought will return, you keep fighting, you keep praying, then we can be sure we're free from committing adultery in the heart, free from a mortal sin. Okay? We entertain impure thoughts willingly, knowingly, after we've reflected on them. Don't try to fight against them. That's where that becomes a serious sin, a mortal sin. So we don't want to do that. The sixth commandment forbids words, looks, or actions alone or with others, arousing conduct. Okay? If you're not married, you don't engage in conduct that will get you sexually aroused. Fornication. Fornication means that's the sin of two people who are not married having sexual relations. That's what fornication is. But that falls under the sixth commandment, because the sixth commandment prohibits in general immodesty, impurity, violations of chastity. Adultery, one or both persons are married, and contraception and sterilization is a violation of the sixth commandment, because you're not carrying through with the action that you're naturally doing, okay? Which a married couple are having sexual relations. The natural result of that, could be a child. Well, to prevent that would be a violation of the sixth commandment, but also a violation of the fifth commandment too, in the sense that you're preventing a life from coming into existence. So preventing a life from coming into existence is like killing a future life, in a sense. Okay, and chastity, modesty, the sixth commandment is endangered by idleness, sinful curiosity. Okay, if something, you don't keep on looking at something or investigate something if you think it may be bad. You just avoid it. Curiosity killed the cat. We don't, out of sinful curiosity, want to look at things. something pops up on the computer, we don't want to investigate and say, oh, I wonder what this is going to be like, because then it may be too late. Okay? Idleness. We don't want to be idle because that could lead to sin. Bad companions, drinking lowers our inhibitions, immodest and indecent TV shows, dress, books, plays, pictures, movies. Okay? These things we want to avoid. Chastity, the sixth commandment, is safeguarded by frequent Mass, confession, Holy Communion, prayer, devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary, who's a model for us, as well as the saints, avoiding occasions of sin, things that could lead us into sin. So, we'll continue with this, finish up the last commandments. But tomorrow I'm going to give you a test, okay? And here's what I want you to be prepared for. I'm basically going to give you what I'm going to test you on right now. Here. Why is the Catholic Church, what reasons are there for the Catholic Church being the true church that Christ founded? If you're going to explain this to someone, for example, the church has 4 marks, 1 holy, Catholic, and apostolic. I want an explanation of what those 4 marks are. I want an explanation of that material I gave you to flesh it out. If you just put 1 holy, Catholic, and apostolic, you're going to get a D, because that's not really an explanation of what those are. I gave explanations, examples of what those 4 marks of the church are, okay, and other biblical evidence. Just study those sheets to be able to write an essay of why the church is the true church. Also, what evidence is there that the Catholic Church and its magisterium, the teaching authority, has authority to teach on moral matters? Okay, and there's evidence. I want you to present an argument. Okay, what evidence is there why the Catholic Church has the right to teach? And the authority of the church, its teaching authority, which is the magisterium. Okay. Where does this authority come from? What biblical evidence do we have of this? And in what way is the church infallible? I explained the ways that the church is infallible in its teaching. In the ordinary magisterium, the extraordinary. There are 2 ways of extraordinary. Be able to explain those, okay? It won't be a long test.
Okay, what was the last one?
Explain why the church is infallible. It's teaching.